I almost wonder if Samsung forgot to push the brick update to the original units, but that wouldn't really make any sense.
From what I've seen and heard, that's not true. There's been people who had the original phones that got hit too.
Okay, that's good, because I actually wasn't sure about that, and because I've only seen people who had the original units. I've never seen a single person until now who's had the replacement, and like to this day.
Yeah, there's a lot more replacements out there that people have and chose to keep than the original ones. The original ones are somewhat hard to come across.
Yeah, and Note 7s even at all now are pretty much hard to come across, because pretty much every major carrier, or not carrier, seller, like, blocked it completely, so you can't even sell them, which is kind of ridiculous. I saw one person on eBay, and I actually screen capped this. I'm not sure if I can show it, but there's one person on eBay. He sold his T-Mobile Coral Blue unit around, like, I want to say like March or April, like right around the SA. And he sold it. He was selling it for like $1,000, and he was like, "Yeah, perfect condition, nothing wrong with it. Green battery, blocked all the updates, no problem." And it got taken down like a day later. Like, I don't think it actually sold, because I couldn't find it on completed listings, so I'm pretty sure they took it down.
If you want to purchase a Note 7, I would go through the Alliance, and sometimes you'll find people who sell them on there. There's actually some people who were lucky enough to end up with 3 or 4 of them, whether it was a family plan thing where they had multiple Note 7s that they got all at once, or they just acquired them when the recall first happened. There's a bunch of people that have multiple Note 7s.
Because like the Note 7, regardless of its problems, was a really good phone, and a lot of people do agree that, but it's just kind of, a lot of people are getting screwed over in ways that people don't usually think about with this recall, because people who are looking for a new phone now, because of the fact that they dropped support for the S6, many carriers are dropping support for the Note 5, even though their releases are much farther apart and the successor isn't even out yet.
That was a big problem, that a lot of people wanted to go back to the Note 5, and they couldn't because the carriers weren't stocking them anymore.
Exactly.
So everyone got stuck with an S7, and a lot of the people who also had the Note 7 already had the S7, so they're like, "You're making me purchase a phone that I already had all over again." So that was another reason why people kept the phone. Not just because they wanted to keep the phone because it was Note 7, but they didn't want to go back to a phone they already had and already paid
because
for
it doesn't make
around.
sense, because like you're not gonna, why would you want 2 of the same phone? I mean, you know, it's and like these Note 5s, we literally got the last 2 Note 5s that Verizon had, and these were made in, like, they say they were made in November of 2016, which I don't quite understand, because they were manufactured in July, so I guess they just happened to be shipped out. But, so we both had to get black units, 32 gigs, and we got the last 2. And I literally saw someone whose Note 4 had died. He came into Verizon, he wanted a Note 7, and they were like, "Oh, we don't have any Notes, so you have to buy the S8 or something else." So they're not stocking any Notes. So until the Note 8 drops, until the Note 8 drops, you can't buy a Note. The rate, I actually had a family, a family that my dad was working with. This is what I was trying to get at, and they had all bought Note 7. An entire family that had this phone that was now bricked. So many of them didn't have phones for the longest of time, because they couldn't swap out, because it would have interfered with their contracts. And Samsung didn't do their due diligence about making sure that the carriers don't screw us over, which you think they would. I know plenty of people who, because of that, are on the S7 Edge, and they're stuck with it until next year.
Yep.
So it really sucks, especially because, you know, like when they rushed the Note 7 to the market, which is part of the reason the battery had the problems. And because of that, whenever people went to exchange it, there was no other phones. All the other phones were old. You know, Pixel wasn't out yet. Moto Z was barely out. iPhone 7 wasn't out yet. LG V20 wasn't out yet. The G5 was crap. So they didn't really have many options.
I mean, I still don't hold Samsung completely 110% responsible for this battery thing, because Samsung gets their batteries made by a second or third party.
Yeah.
So on the first Note, they went with, I don't even remember the distributor's name or manufacturer's name. They made batteries.
Yeah.
And then when they had the problems with that one, they switched to another battery maker for the second run of green battery Note 7. So those were 2 separate manufacturers that actually made the battery for the original white battery Note 7 and the green battery Note 7. So that's something else to, educate people on too. Is that's not many phone companies. I think Sony might be the only one who actually still makes their own batteries. They're all subbed out. All that work is subbed out to other companies.
And I know with the initial batch of Note 7s, the launch ones, they initially started with Samsung's subsidiary. I think they're called SDI or STI, something like that. I could be wrong on that. But either way, it's still not Samsung, but it's like an in-house group that's like based from Samsung. That was. I think the problem with the initial ones is that they were having problems taking the batteries and putting them into the packs. And then with the second manufacturer, I forgot which company it was, but it was actually the same company that made batteries for the iPhone 7 for the iPhones. So, and one thing that Jerry Rig Everything proved on his video, back when this was like around January when this was revealed what was wrong with them, he actually found out that many of the green battery units were actually using the old defective batteries, which could, in all honesty, like after I realized that, I think that could be literally like the entire cause of the second recall. Like, I think there might have been some of the original batteries that were still out there because Samsung wasn't doing their due diligence. They say that some of them had a manufacturing defect. I think that could be an issue, but I'm not sure that's exactly what caused it.
I think it's the actual design of the battery had this defect. It was just a couple of bad batteries throughout millions that they made. And, it just so happened that somebody got that phone with the defective battery.
I know, and it's very unfortunate because, I mean, obviously this doesn't look good to the consumer. And the truth is that one thing that Samsung did with the initial recall is that I think they focused a lot more on looking good to consumers than actually rectifying the situation, which, to be fair, they were rectifying the situation, and they were doing it, at the time, we considered relatively well. And, DJ Ko even issued like an apology saying, hey, these new Note 7s, they're safe. They're perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. And then they blew up again. So that's kind of unfortunate, especially for consumers. But however, I think that this cloud does have a silver lining in the fact that if this issue was swept under the rug and Samsung decided that we'll deal with them on a case-by-case basis, which they very easily could have done because it was still a relatively small number of units, I think that then we wouldn't have, I think in the long run this will be kind of a good thing because it will kind of bring up safety, and it will kind of like make sure these companies aren't pushing out potentially dangerous products.
Absolutely.
Which that I am all for, and that is one thing where I am kind of somewhat glad that this happened. I mean, obviously you can't really say that to the people who are victim to this, who's had phones explode and who've had damaged property, and even that one guy who got bronchitis because he had inhaled the smoke and when it caught on fire overnight. That's unfortunate, but at the very least it should helpfully protect, because I even saw I don't know if you saw this, where what's inside. They did a video about the S8 and they had stabbed the battery and it didn't catch fire, it didn't explode, it let out a tiny little bit of smoke, not even, and it mostly just like spewed little battery juices. And to this day, the S8's been out for how long, and I haven't seen a single one that caught on fire. Not a single one.
After the Note 7, they made this 8-step safety program for phones.
Well, yeah, I know about the 8-point safety check. I'm just saying that like not even a single one got out there. Which I would have expected. I would have expected at least one bad one to get out there.
I was actually expecting people to prank and try and get a lawsuit. Like actually fake an S8 catching on fire to try to get a lawsuit and say, oh, Samsungs are unsafe. That's what I was expecting. And I was waiting around, looking for stories, and I didn't see anything the first 3-4 weeks at launch. And I was expecting someone to try to do a fake story or even fake the phone catching on fire. Because as you know, a lot of these cases, even on the first round, turned out to be fraudulent. So
I've yet to see an S8 even overheat, which even with the S7s, there were still some units that overheated but didn't quite explode. And there were even some stories of S7s, and mainly S7 Edges, which kind of led me to believe for a while that the curved display was actually a culprit. But I think that was just those were just
the curved display takes up more space.
It does.
because it's not a square, it's round. It actually takes more space out of the internals of the phone, so they got to cram everything tighter.
And one thing that people forget about the Note 7 is that, yes, it had a smaller battery than the S7, but they have to make room for the S Pen, which is like
the S Pen's a lot of space.
Which is like a giant hole inside of the phone that you can't use space for the battery.
That's a lot of real estate.
Yeah, so like if they were trying to cram a battery that was almost as big as the one in the S7 Edge, you know, people didn't really think much of it because, oh, well, the Note 7's a bigger phone, but this takes up a lot of space. And this little thing is, I mean, in a way, almost part of a culprit, because if they made a version of the Note 7 that didn't have the S Pen, kind of like what they did with the S6 Edge Plus a couple years ago, I don't think that unit would have been really affected. And yep, you got the So there's your proof. All of you people who are watching this and saying, oh, he doesn't have a Note 7. Well, there's his S Pen. You can't even find those anymore.
There you go.
Yeah,
black one.
You got only the Note 7 had the black S Pen. Well, and the FE, but I have yet to find Note FE replacement S Pens, which is kind of unfortunate. And like, you haven't broken your S Pen at all?
This is actually a replacement S Pen. I've only dropped this phone outside, like on pavement, 2 times, and the first time I dropped it, nothing happened to the phone, but the S Pen popped out, and the top of the clicker got a scratch in it. And I'm like, well, screw it, I'll go on Amazon and just get another one. So that's what I did.
Yeah, because you like stockpiled stuff, right? And this actually happened
about 2 weeks into the recall. This happened about 2 weeks into the recall, so I was worried, oh man, is Amazon even going to be selling this stuff anymore? And thank God they did, and they actually had a blowout on all the cases and stuff. I have about 30 Note 7 cases inside that I got for anywhere from $2 to $10, just because they had a blowout just to move all this excess product.
Are you going to get that one that I sent you, so you have 31?
You sent me one?
I sent you a link to that Griffin one.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I looked at it.
You didn't really like it?
But I have 3 cases that look very similar to it. Yeah, I have 3 cases that look very similar
I saw the one on your video that said the forced updates are finished and we win, and it does look very similar to this case, especially when you
That's my favorite case for the phone. I like phones that are clear in the back, and I like to rock a clear phone on this Note 7, so in case someone notices it.
Yeah, that's why I got the clear case too, because which, I mean, I don't have that many cases. I only have a couple. I only have like 1 or 2 cases.
But I went a little overboard, and I got about 30, and my girlfriend was really getting pissed off at me, so I had to stop.
I mean, how much do you think you even spent on like all of those cases combined, if you had to guess?
I don't know. You know, like I said, some varied between $2 to $5. Others were 10 to 12. But Amazon had like huge 50% off sales on all these cases, and even like the battery, like the wireless charge case they had.
The backpack that you like put on the back of it and it wirelessly charges. Yeah.
I think I got that for $17.99. It was originally $60.
Holy crap, that's awesome. I actually got I got the Note 5, the S View flip cover, brand new for like $14, but the clear view is still like almost $60. So at least like the Note 5 stuff, since it is last year's phone, stuff is like really cheap. Like this I got for $14. This was my dad's old one. This one was like $12. This one was like $10. This one, UAG, which is normally like $40, I got it for $15. And
that one I actually paid $25 for when I first bought the phone. That was the first case I ever had for my first Note 7. Yeah, but it was black. It was all black.
Yeah, this is a really good case.
Yeah, it is. I paid $25. I paid full retail for that case at the Sprint store because that was the only one they had for it.
Yeah, my dad, he got one of these too, and we bought our Note 5, and they only had one left. So he was like, oh man, they only had one left, and he paid like $40 for it. I got this for $15, so I'm glad they didn't have it.
Yeah. Cases are normally cheap online because there's so much competition.
Yeah, true. So,
but going back to what you were saying, in total accessories and everything, because I bought some accessories for the phone too, I'd say probably around $300 I spent total, somewhere in there. You know, with the wireless charging, all the cases. You know, I bought a whole bunch of extra cords, extra Samsung cords.
Yeah. So which now the cords are going to be like plenty easy to find. Because of the S8. So you can just use S8 cords, and then they're sleek and black. Which, I mean, have you bought a pair of S8 cords? Because that matches your black Note 7 perfectly.
I actually haven't. I just bought a black type Type-C cord.
Yeah.
It wasn't a Samsung brand, but it was a high-end brand. I forget what it is off the top of my head, but I bought a black one.
True, and you can use pretty much any Samsung fast charger.
Yeah. And also, I was using the regular charger and then using that adapter, like the regular Samsung fast charge cord, and I just used that Type-C adapter.
Oh, yeah, that little Type-C thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a wireless charger? Because I have...
Yes, I do. Yeah. That was something I buy, but I really don't use it that much anymore.